Hi, welcome to Part 4, Troubleshooting and the Registry. Normally, I work through every single page of the PowerPoint presentation, but for this particular PowerPoint presentation, a lot of the pages are concerned with items that are very difficult to capture on video, uh, especially the BIOS screen and the option screen for Windows 8. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be starting on slide 18 in the PowerPoint with the commands. And I'm going to leave reading the beginning of the PowerPoint to you, and you can kind of experiment with a little bit with your own systems. As a matter of fact, if this class were at Delta, I wouldn't be able to display the BIOS screen because they've got it passworded, so I wouldn't be able to display that information at all. But you can display the BIOS screen on your home computers by following the directions for the most part. Now, one caveat is newer systems are booting up so fast that you can't get to the BIOS screens necessarily. And I hope I made clear in the PowerPoint that Windows 8 uses a different type of option screen, and you need to get to that option screen in a different way than you would for Windows 7. So, with that said, let's start with some commands. Now, I've already got a command prompt window open, and I have it open in administrator mode. The reason for that is several of the commands we're going to be using can only be used in administrator mode, so I might as well just simply start there. Now, on slide 18, the first command I have listed there is format, and it's a very simple command that is used for small drives like floppy disk or USB drives. But it does still work and is supported even in Windows 8. I'm simply going to do help format to give you more information. It does give you a lot of options so that you can specify different sizes. If you're going to be formatting anything larger than a thumb drive, my recommendation is to stick with the disk part command that we talked about in part 3. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip format and I'm going to go to check disk, the next thing I have listed in the PowerPoint. Check disk has been around for a while, and just like I have listed in the PowerPoint, you can simply type check disk all by itself and it will scan but not attempt to fix your default drive, which is the drive you're currently connected to. Or you can type help check disk and it can give you more information, or you can specify a drive to run check disk on. I currently have a small thumb drive plugged in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run check disk on that without any other options. Oops, sorry about that. And it's B because remember, or if you remember, in the video for Part 3 directories, I did use disk part to reassign a drive letter to that particular USB connection. So since I've plugged in a USB thumb drive to that connection, it automatically gets assigned the drive letter B now. So I'm just simply going to run this. And since it's very, very small and it's only FAT32, remember most thumb drives are FAT32, so they can be used in multiple, used with multiple operating systems. Now, one of the options you can use is to fix, and that's a /F switch. So I'm going to type chk dsk /fb:. And yeah, it's not done yet. It's verifying, attempting to fix things. Now, one thing I do want to point out with the /F switch, and it's done, it didn't find any problems. One thing I want to bring up is a /F switch looks at only the areas of the disk that are being used. Another switch on slide 19, the /R switch, looks at every single area of the disk known as a sector and examines everything on the disk, whether it's in use or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that option with my B drive and see if it makes much of a difference. Now it's taking a little bit longer, and it still hasn't found any problems. And I'll get my prompt back here shortly. There it is. Alright, there's several different switches that are available for the check disk command. And normally when you would run the check disk command is when you're in recovery mode and you're at the command line. Mainly because the drive you're checking in order to fix things needs to be unmounted. So I haven't done that with any of with my C drive. The R switch attempts to fix, so it did attempt to fix things on the thumb drive since it's not very big. There are some new options for Windows 8. I'm currently doing this video using Windows 7. In the PowerPoint, what you should do is read through those a bit. What ends up happening with Windows 8 is when you scan when you manually scan using check disk and it finds errors, what it does is it schedules those errors to be fixed when the system is rebooted. So even though you specify to fix the errors, it won't fix them until the system's rebooted. Now, Windows 8 and 8.1 are running some disk checks in the background so that when it does find problems and you reboot, it automatically fixes those problems. So whereas the chk dsk check disk command I just showed still functions, you don't need to run it for Windows 8 anymore. Whereas with Windows 7, there's still some advantages to manually running it. But with Windows 8, 8.1, and I assume with Windows 10, you're going to have automatic checks run in the background, so you don't need to do as much manual checking of your hard drive as you used to. Now, one of the things check disk would do is it would attempt to fix errors where your index system that points to where files are located thinks more than one file is using the same spot on the disk. And I do talk about that a little bit on slide 18. It recovers any data in .chk files, but the problem is you need to use Notepad to look at those files, and you're only going to get a small portion of any file that it was able to recover at all. So if you have something called a cross-linked file, And I'm just going to spell that out on the screen. CROSSLIN, now let me space it, LINKED file. Those are two or more files that the system thinks are using the exact same spot on your hard drive. And when check disk fixes those, or in Windows 8 when its background scanning fixes those, you are going to lose the data from possibly all the files, since it's not able to really recover the files sufficiently. So that's why you should have good backups of your files. Cross-link files don't happen that often, but they can. And there's nothing you can do about it when it happens. There just happened to be something that occurred, let's say during a power outage. You're typing away, you're working on your files, and you lose power on the computer. Then what'll happen is things did not get cleaned up properly. You reboot the computer, and the system doesn't think a particular area of the disk is in use, or your file got partially updated and you can only read part of the file. Well, usually what happens is you can't read any of the file, even though it's listed in your directory. So about your only recourse then is to run check disk or reboot your system normally, and if it's Windows 8 or 10, 8, 8.1 or 10, hopefully it'll run the fixes in the background. You'll get your file back, a truncated version of your file. But there's not much you can do about if a cross-link file occurs or something happens like that. Alright, moving on. Another command I have listed in the PowerPoint starts on slide 22. It's called the SC command, for service controller command. If I type help SC, you get an awful lot of options that you can use. Now what this allows you to do is, if you're at the command line in recovery mode, you can use this to start up certain services, like maybe your network services or what have you. You can actually get a list of all the services that are currently active to make sure things are shut down. So if I type sc query, and I'm going to pipe this to the more command because there's an awful lot. And this is the type of information you get. You get the service name at the top, what kind of display name is used in processes, what type of service it is, what the state is. So right now it's running, meaning it's active. You can stop it, but you can't pause it. One of the options is pause, and it ignores shutting down. There's audio endpoint builder, and if you kind of page through this, there's an awful lot of processes that are running on your system that you didn't start, that the operating system started. So I'm simply going to quit from that. Now you can get a list of just the active services or just the inactive. Now technically, the command you use to get a list of services in a particular state, like the state of Michigan, you would type the command this way: sc, hold on, oh, I'm froze. That's nice. Oh. Alright, well, we'll just start back up. Right click on this, run as administrator. Yes, I want to run this as administrator. Okay, there we go. That was a bit odd. I'm not sure what happened there. So let me make this window a little bit bigger again. Alright, so going back to my querying services and what their state they're in, SCQU query. Now, I want to query services, so I would say type equals with no space between, but now I need a space, and service. So technically what I should type next is state equals, and then active. But watch what happens. Invalid state field. Because active is the default state, if you try to specify it explicitly, you get an error. So what you would do is you would leave the state option off and just do this. And there is quite a few that are active, and so I'll pipe this to more. And what this would do is I would only have the active services displayed. Alright, so let me quit, go back to this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the inactive. In other words, that's any that's not running because it's paused or stopped, whatever. And I think there's quite a few of those as well. So let me see. Yep. Flash Player Update Service is stopped right now. You can have services that are stopped and they get enabled or they run based on some other application or service that's installed. It's just that particular service happens to be stopped or paused right now. What this enables you to do then is you can start or stop certain services if you need to when you're in recovery mode, so that in case something's not shutting down correctly or you need to make sure something's shutting down, you can go into command line mode and do that. Alright, that's all I'm going to do, talk about the SC, the Service Controller Service. I don't want to stop any services and accidentally lock up again. So what I'm going to talk about is the shutdown command, which is on slide 24. And what just scrolled by is a list of error values you can give that will be written to the log when you use the shutdown command. But shutdown command has several switches for it. When you use the shutdown command, you have to tell it whether you're going to shut down the computer or shut down and restart the computer. So remember before I said that Windows 8, 8.1, and probably Windows 10 do a lot of background processes for checking on your computer. So if you've got your system's paused or you're in recovery mode and you want to make sure the computer restarts, shuts down and restarts, then you can issue this command from the command line. So I can go ahead, this command works both in Windows 7 and Windows 8, but if I do that right now, it's going to take a while to reboot the computer and I don't want to waste time doing that. Now, one thing I do want to point out is on slide 24, I talk about a /O switch for Open Advanced Boot Options on Restart. That's a Windows 8 only switch. I don't know for sure if it's used in Windows 10. It may be. As I talked earlier in the PowerPoint, the /O switch is what you use with Windows 8 and 8.1 to restart your computer so that you get into the advanced options so that you can open up the command line without the full graphical interface being up and running as well. Right now there does, or I need to say it a different way, sorry. Right now there isn't another way other than what I have listed in the PowerPoint for restarting your computer and getting into the open advanced boot options other than using shutdown or holding down shift while you restart. The explanation that I've read online has to do with how quickly Windows 8, 8.1, and I assume 10 start up, so that the normal ways of doing things that you're used to using F2, for instance, to get into the BIOS, no longer work because they can't be trapped quick enough before the system starts booting up. Alright, the next command I want to talk about is the fsutil command, and I'm going to type fsutil help. And what that does is it gives me several items I can specify. Now, whereas the diskpart command gave you a prompt so that you can specify things one at a time, the fsutil command expects you to type all the options you're going to use all on one command line. So for instance, in the PowerPoint, slide 25, I've give you some examples. So if I want to get help for this fsinfo command, or subcommand is what I should call it, I need to type fsutil fsinfo help. And then it gives me a list of things to get help about. So now I see that one of the subcommands for fsinfo is drives, to list all drives, so I can specify that command. But remember, I don't get a prompt, I have to type everything out on one line. So it's fsutil fsinfo drives. And that gets me a list of all the connected drives. So notice right now I have a connected A drive, I have a connected B drive, C, and D. Now, it does not tell you what that particular drive is unless you use the drive type command. So if I use fsutil fsinfo drive type D, for instance, it tells me it's a CD-ROM drive. Notice it didn't say optical drive, it said a CD-ROM drive. fsutil is an older command, so it doesn't quite have all the up-to-date specifications. This does give you, I'm sorry, I should say fsutil does give you a different way of getting information about different objects on your computer than diskpart does, but it doesn't always give you as clear information back as diskpart does. Alright. Now we can do fsutil like I have in my PowerPoint on slide 26. If I say fsutil volume C colon, well, I need to specify more information. So what I'll do is do this, disk free. Alright. What I wanted to show you is that if you forget part of the command, it will give you a list of supported subcommands related to what you typed in. So if you forget some of the subcommands, you can type part of the command in and it'll let you know what you're missing, somewhat at least. Alright, so getting the full correct command of fsutil volume disk free C, it tells me the number of free bytes, the number of bytes used, and the number of available free bytes. These two numbers, free bytes and available free bytes, most of the time are equal. This available free bytes may reflect, may be a lower number based on if there's any bad areas on the disk, any clusters or sectors that can't be used. But most of the time those two numbers are the same. Okay, if I do fsutil dirty query C, it tells me C is not dirty, and that comes from slide 26. If the volume's been flagged to be checked on the next reboot. One of the options in the check disk command allows you to set the drive to be checked or fixed on the next reboot, and if that was set that way, you could use this command to actually see if it were set or not. Now, the flagging the drive works whether you're in Windows 7 or Windows 8 and 8.1. Alright, those are all the basic troubleshooting or commands to check on things. What I'm going to talk about now is called the registry. And if you haven't heard of the registry before this, ever since Windows 95, the original graphical interface for Windows, Microsoft, by they I mean Microsoft, uses a database to store all the settings your computer uses for everything, the operating system, applications, device drivers, what have you. And the database is called the registry. And to look at the registry, you can type the command regedit, R-E-G-E-D-I-T. And once you do that, a whole new window opens up, displaying all of the different what are known as hives in the registry. And when you click on some of the hives, it takes you and you can get to more of the information, and there's a lot of stuff stored in the registry. Now, you need to be extremely careful when you're looking at the registry, because if you accidentally delete something in the registry, your computer might not start up. It's as simple as that. Some things you can get away with if you accidentally delete them, or even on purpose, but you need to really be careful. Now, I do explain in the PowerPoint what the different hives represent and what data is stored in them. So I'm not going to go into any more of that, but I just wanted to open up the registry so you can see exactly how massive it is. Here's our software. There's AVG, the antivirus I'm currently running on this system. And so this is the sort of thing you see when you open this up. Basically, they're just settings, they're short values that are stored concerning certain settings for either the operating system or software that's installed. Now, to close the registry, you simply click on the X and close it up. Now, starting on slide 30, I talk about a couple of commands you can use to look at values in the registry without using regedit. If you know exactly what key or value in a key that you want to display, you can type that with a command called reg, and I'm simply going to type reg/?. Now, this is an unusual situation where help doesn't display any help for reg. You have to use /?. So when I do that, it gives me the different options you can use on reg. Now, like fsutil, reg expects you to type all the command on one line. It doesn't give you a prompt. So, if you want to do a query, I give an example on slide 30 about what a reg query would look like. So I'm going to type out that example. And please note the slashes in the example are correct. You have to use backslashes to specify the complete key elements. Okay, so assuming I typed it incorrectly, and this would be a bad time to do a typo, this is what you get back. Displays the full name of the key. Now notice for the query I typed HKLM. That's an abbreviation you can use, in this case, for H key local machine. In the PowerPoint, in parentheses, I do list these 4-character abbreviations you're allowed to use, so you don't have to type out the entire name. The other items here, display name, for instance, is your registry key value name. So if you specify /v, you can display a particular value you want to look at. If all you want to do is look at the entire key, you type the query like I did here. But if you actually want to display just one value name in the key, you have to use the /v switch. All right. And this image path, this is the example I give on slide 30 about how to specify one particular value name to display only that. So image path is not just some fill-in value. That is an actual value name within the DNS cache key. So, and here's the actual value of that particular item. And then the rest of this is just the other items, keys underneath DNS cache. These aren't value names, parameters, security, trigger info. Those are other keys that are subkeys to the DNS cache key. Once you give it one key, it displays everything that is underneath that particular key. Now, there are some commands I've listed in the PowerPoint. I've listed save command, a restore command that allows you to back up and restore any keys. So for instance, I could specify the DNS cache and it would save that file for me, or I'm sorry, save that key for me. So if I specify sorry, I don't know why I'm using the arrow key instead of home. So I want to do save. So I'm going to save that. Now, it does not remove it from the registry. So this is a safe command to use. It just simply is going to make a backup of that key. So I need to give it a file name, save key name. So now I'm going to go back to the end, and I'm going to specify the file name, and I'm going to specify well, where do I want to put this? I'm going to put this on B. DNS backup. Now let me be more specific. DNS cache backup. And I'll specify it, and it should get saved on B at the root. Completed successfully. So now when I do B:\\, there's my DNS cache backup file. Now, one of the things that I did not do, which you should do when you're doing this, is specify the file extension. So, let me do this again, and .hiv. Okay, so now I actually have two files out there, one with the file extension, one without. The reason you want to specify the file extension is to identify specifically what format this backup is in. If I do more DNS cache backup, either one, it's going to tell me it can't access that file. The reason is that the file is stored in a certain format that only the registry understands. So that's why you should use the .hiv extension to make sure the file gets stored, or I'm sorry, to make sure you know what file type that particular registry backup is in. Alright, now that's different than the export and import commands I talk about on slide 32. So let me do an export, and I'll save it on B, but I need to actually specify export. Again, this is a safe, S-A-F-E, safe command to use because it doesn't delete it. So if I export, go to end. Now I want to make this a .reg command. Oh, I'm sorry, extension. All right. So it's almost the exact same command, except I'm saying export instead of save. So let me do that. And now I'm just looking at my more command that I specified before. Oh, I am so sorry. It's getting late. So let me try doing more B:\\, DNS instead of doing this. Since it is getting late, I'm starting to get tired. Let me save myself some typing. Hopefully that will save me some more mistakes. So now let me try this. Okay, there we go. See, it's displaying it, but it's in a format that is not text. All right. Now, however, here's the .reg file I created with the export command. This allows you to actually be able to read what you saved. So it's in plain text. It's just everything is listed out with the correct keys and the correct value names for you to look at. If you wanted to make a change, you could edit this file, make the change, and then use the import command that's also on slide 32 to put this data back into the registry with your changes. Now, why would you want to do something like that? Well, this would be one way for you to make a global change to computers in a lab where they need to have one registry setting changed. You could run this file by using the import command, and it would just simply get written to, and you wouldn't have to go through using regedit and manually drilling down to a particular value and changing that value. So this would save you a lot of time. The save command, reg save, is used just for backups. You're not going to be able to edit that file. So you could back up that. Now, if you needed to back up a registry entry from one computer and you wanted to put that registry entry on another computer, then you could do that, but you wouldn't be able to edit and change it. So you could use reg restore on a different computer using that file. So let me just quit out of here. All right. That's the most common commands you would use with the registry. Now, some less common commands you would use with the registry are file typing commands, and I've got those on the last slide, slide 33. There's a assoc command, ASSOC, which allows you to look at or set file application associations with file extensions. So you can simply type ASSOC, let me do more, and it'll list all the associations and all the file extensions those file type associations are with. So as you can see, there's a lot. It starts with the .386, .AAC, ACCDA, access. So there's my ACCDB for access application .14. You notice a lot of these have numbers after them with when you're speaking about, or I'm sorry, when you're looking at applications. I'm not sure where the 14 comes. Setting file associations this way is a bit of a pain. It's hard to get it correctly, but it can be done. If I do ASSOC.docx, for instance, oops, sorry, I spelled this wrong. You can, when you specify just one file extension, it will tell you what application is associated with that particular file extension. And then if you need to know where that path and program are located, you can use the ftype command. So you would type ftype word.document.12, and it would tell you what specific application is associated with that particular file type. Usually it's difficult, like I said, to get these absolutely correct. At the very end of this, you notice that it's called WinWord, and there's a /n and then a %1. What you've got going here is the /n refers to a new line, and then the %1 is a script parameter where you're specifying, or not, well, let me say it this way. You're allowing WinWord to accept a value to act on. So this would be, for instance, when you double click on a file, it uses that file name in place of the %1 and then hands the file name to the winword.exe application. Then Word opens up and your file gets opened up when Word gets opened up. When we talk about scripting, you'll find out more about these %1 values. All right, but as you can see, it's not very pleasant having to set file association and file types this way, but it can be done if absolutely necessary. When you get into actually file hardware troubleshooting, if you go to the hardware class, they do talk more about this than I am going to. So I'm going to kind of shove it off onto that class rather than trying to explain it here. I just wanted to show you some of the commands you could get file association. So for instance, if you can't figure out why a particular file's not being opened up, you can use the association command, ASSOC, and the file type command to see if it even has a file type associated with it. So that may be why the file's not being opened up at all. All right. With that, that's all I'm going to talk about as far as troubleshooting and the registry. So the next thing we'll be working on for after this will be Part 5, which I think Part 5 is talking about scripting. We'll have to see. But at any rate, I am done. Thanks for listening to this video and watching it, and we'll see you next time.